the season has concluded, and there were some surprises. Some stuff that I didn't expect, you didn't expect. I wouldn't say... But you know what? At the top of it, we said whether Vanguard won, Bluecoats won, or Boston won, we wouldn't be shocked or offended or think it would be ridiculous. So it was a fun weekend though overall.
Yeah, it was a great weekend. Lots of good stuff to talk about for a lot of groups, which we'll get into. But yeah, I am excited to wrap this one up in a bow. I think there's still a few groups we'll react to.
Yeah.
On the back end of this, but as far as the actual season goes, we'll tie this one up here.
Yep. So before we jump into how our predictions turned out and everything, welcome everyone to the Aged Out Podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Michael Fantini, and with me as always is
Evan Worrell.
And make sure you comment, like, subscribe on the YouTube video. Let us know what you think about how things shook out in terms of the placements, you know, prelims, semis, finals. What do you agree with? What do you not agree with? You know, we love all the opinions and just hearing it all be discussed down in that comment section. So also share the podcast with anyone you think might appreciate it. Follow us on Facebook or Instagram so you never miss an update or a new piece of content. Patreon.com or the join button right here on YouTube if you want to support us financially, or you can head over to agedoutpodcast.com, link in the video description, to grab yourself a logo t-shirt or a logo sticker. The Aged Out Fundamentals playlist, again, we're going to keep pushing that thing. Drum corps season's over. Audition season is right around the corner, so make sure you drum to that every day. It will definitely help. It's a great practice tool. What bourbon is that? Is that a Four Roses?
No, this is going to be a special occasion for me tonight because I don't think I've ever had this before.
All right, well.
This is a bottle of 1792 Full Proof. It's kind of clear. But
nice.
Yeah, I've had some of the other 1792 products, but I don't think I've ever had the Full Proof. So.
All right, cool. Let me know how it is.
It's
lastly,
125 proof.
This video is also sponsored, once again, by Brash Drums. Head to brashdrums.com. Grab yourself some of the best practice pads that we've ever used. Lightweight, designed by a product engineer, bass drummer for the cadets in the mid-2000s. Brashdrums.com. Articulate, lightweight. The Alpha Pad is especially awesome. Upload your own custom image or pick one of the stock ones, including one of ones, which is our logo. But, all right. This was nuts. I'm going to switch the screen. We're going to dive right in to how things shook out. So before we jump into talking about anything specifically, if in my column or Evan's column, if it's blue, we were one placement off. If it's green, we got it spot on. And if it's white, we weren't even in the ballpark. I had no idea what we were talking about. And I will say I was going for 50%. I did not get it. I will say,
if you include the overall placements, we
I will say, I was getting ready to scroll down. Take a look at the overall placements. We only had... You had 2 wrong, and I had 2 wrong. We were pretty spot on how everything from a core standpoint shook out, but percussion, all over the place.
Yeah, that Cavaliers one, I hated that I got that one right, but yeah.
As a core?
Yeah.
Yeah, we both got that right, but that is what it is at this point. But, okay, do you want to start at the bottom or start at the top? Because we figured we'll just work our way through this and talk about the various groups and what we saw about them at finals and everything. As we work our way through this. So you want to go bottom to top to bottom?
Well, we can go. I think I'll start with some placements that I got pretty aggressively wrong, which was the Madison Scouts one. Predicted them at 18th. They ended up making finals and would have been 12th on the 3-night average. Or they are actually, I believe, in the 12th spot in the 2-night average. But then the way that the finals judge, his scores were just a little bit lower altogether across the board.
Yeah,
it brought their average down a little bit, so it ended up bumping Crest up into the top 12. So a little caveat there, but so I was pretty aggressively wrong on that. So sorry, and also a pretty aggressively wrong on Spirit, and I don't know. Let's
start there because prelims they were 20th. Which, Spartans were above them. And I'm not saying Spartans were bad, but all of us were kind of just did they just fall over on the field? Half the drum line got taken out by some guard members and stopped playing. And, I would never have guessed that group would have been in 20th on prelims.
Yeah, especially after we saw them warm up on semifinals night.
Mm-hmm. Shocked us even more.
I was like, this is 20th? I was like, I don't know about that, but hopefully for the members and the staff's sake, some of the tape reflected that justification. maybe they did just, prelims jitters type thing, and then they settled in for night 2. I can't really speak on that, but I was definitely shocked to see that their score after prelims in the placement in semifinals seemed to make more sense with like what I saw on the lot and what I've seen in their show videos. And I think also too, every year we just forget how much is hidden
by the videos
on videos.
Oh man,
rather than in person.
We even talked about that in the car ride up from Indy after you picked me up in Louisville. I was like, I know, I'm just going to, the first 30 minutes in the lot, I'm going to look at you and go, how is it?
Dude, this is fantastic.
I've got some Elijah Craig toasted barrel tonight.
Man, that's great.
I once again forgot to give you your bottle of that, by the way, that I have at the house. But
that's all right.
We'll figure that out. But yeah, so we were just talking. I knew it happens every year. We both show up and watch our first few drum lines from 5-10 feet away, and we go, man, YouTube hides a lot.
Yeah, the technology is great, and you can definitely hear some stuff, but just like the balance things,
the small stuff and the balance things are lost in translation.
Which is also why later on the judge should never be off the field. But we'll get to that. So.
Yeah, so Spirit was a big shock. I think something wonky had to go on there. Someone let us know if you know how Spirit's prelims run was, because that just seemed so not in the ballpark of where we figured they would be. And they were higher on semis, and they were right. They were like 16th, 15th. Is that what it was?
Yeah, I think they where were they over there? 17-8. So definitely way higher. I mean, they were above Scouts, above Blue Knights, above everybody in that bottom half, if you're looking at that column, above Pacific Crest. So they're probably 12th in semis then.
And that was really where we got the most wrong, that 12 to 17 range. And we said that when we had the predictions podcast. We were like, man, we're going on minimal information here. We've seen these groups less. We haven't followed them as closely. So this is probably where we're going to get got. And I was totally off 12 to 17. You were a little closer. But so, yeah, Spirit, big surprise there. Scouts were the next surprise for me.
Spirit was 12th in semifinals. Scouts.
So, you know what? We were right if you go off the semifinal score. So there you go, everybody. So Scouts were way better in person than I thought. They brought it around down the stretch.
I noticed they were doing like some tracking in the lot.
Yeah.
And I don't know if they were doing that all season, but I think that stuff was those small little tweaks maybe the staff was inserting was helping benefit just like the member focus, the member psyche. Sometimes when you're tracking, like it just takes you out of like the lot for a minute and you just transfer into like what you're supposed to be doing in the moment because you're like, oh, this is like muscle memory 2.0.
Right.
So, I mean, we always tracked in the lot at Crown, so I can relate to that.
Just the Scouts sound was solid. You know, they played pretty well. Like they were just a lot better than I thought. And again, once again, you can, admittedly, they're in that range that we didn't haven't done the homework we'd done on everybody else just because time. But so good for them. I think they finished the season strong as a drum line. You know, from where they started at the beginning of the season. BK was right where we thought they'd be. Like they were pretty much what I expected. We only watched them a little bit one of the days. We didn't watch their whole lot or anything, but it was probably right of what I expected, essentially.
I think one of the bigger surprises for me on the semifinals was honestly when we watched Academy for a little bit.
Dude, they were solid. They were better than I thought they were going to be.
I don't know anything. I don't know how the front was this year, but the battery was really, really strong. Playing really well. I mean, everybody's giving up some stuff here and there. Literally everybody.
Even at the very top.
Just the quality in the tuning scheme they adopted with that. I know they were on some of the more like OG Mapex drums, not the ones with like the detachable snare bed or whatever that is. And stood there and talked to some of their staff for a little bit and was just like, yeah, man, members are playing like really, really strong.
Yep, so, they were strong. Pacific Crest was exactly what I expected to, in a good way. We stood and talked to Eric Shriver for a little bit, watched good chunk of them playing their book, and tuning was great, as you would expect. The writing was cool. I think Eric's got a good thing going there. I think he was telling me that it's really close to home, where they do spring training and where the Corps at. It's convenient since he has kids. He likes the organization. It's got a good foundation administratively. So I think you'll start seeing even better things come out of that percussion section with him with him and his team doing their thing out there. So that was good to see. Really enjoyed that group.
Great balance, great blend from just the flat line and the basses. So
yep. So let's see. We can jump into the top 12. I don't want to spend a ton of time on just like every individual group, but we got to keep it moving. We have some topics we want to discuss after we get through this. So
yes, I do.
So I had Mandarins and Blue Stars called right on the nose. You were right on Blue Stars. Troopers, where we both had Troopers lower, and that was they had a heck of a weekend, man.
Yeah.
I don't know if even they expected to finish as strong as they did. Obviously, they're rooting for themselves, but everybody's realistic as a staff, and they see what everybody else is doing and how the scores have gone all season, but they have to be ecstatic with how their weekend shook out.
Yeah, just an overall fantastic show, fantastic percussion ensemble, really consistent as far as like the battery goes. I will say when I went from like Blue Stars, Colts, Mandarins into like Cavaliers, Troopers land of like lots, I did feel like I noticed like a shift in just like, I don't want to say the volume, but like the power of the ensemble and like the overall sound of the battery. Just
I would agree with that.
The clarity, and
you could hear a difference.
The touch too.
Mm-hmm.
You could definitely just like hear a difference. So I think that was a separator, and you can kind of see that too. Like on the very far right of that, I did some spreads of like the placements. There was like a little bit of a shelf between Colts and then like jump up to Cavaliers, Troopers, Crown area. But
yep. I think it was like a 4/10 gap from that point up. I think
almost
something like that. But I will say, while we're on the topic of Troopers for a second, let's just jump into this. So they finished 7th on the 3-night average. There are obvious similarities to the battery approach between them and Vanguard. Rennick writes the battery book. I'm right about that, right?
Well, both Rennicks write the books. Paul writes the battery and Sandy writes the front, as far as I know.
Okay. Since they've gotten to this level, I mean, you're basically competing with Vanguard at this point. Like, you're in the top 7, top 8, top 6, depending on the show. I think Lauren's proved that her and her team can do it. I think she should write the front, and they should find a way to establish the battery's own identity at this point. They've achieved a level to where it's like, you're not in 13th place. You all know what you're doing. Not to say they didn't know what they were doing the whole time, but like they've proven it competitively at this point in terms of the results on the page. And it's like, at some point, I feel like you'd want to move away to get your own specific identity.
Because it definitely feels like the horn line and the core overall have a different identity than Vanguard, like as a whole. Obviously, they're gonna dude. Shout out the Troopers for like the fastest show announcement ever. They like announced it the next day what their show is next year.
I saw that. That was funny. I thought it was a joke at first. I was like, is this like a meme? Was
it like the final sunset or something? So like the 3-part trilogy to their last 2 shows next year. So obviously they kind of have established an identity for the core. And just that organization itself. So it does make sense to try to like separate at some point, because the cores didn't finish that far apart. Like 6 and 10 is like not crazy.
Not that far. Not that far apart at all.
And obviously like 7 and 1 is like, I mean, that is a difference. But like if you're climbing the ladder in the next step, I know we've gotten some flack on here before from past Trooper members being like, don't compare us to Vanguard. It's like, it's
hard not to.
It's impossible.
It's hard not to. I think at this point, you find a different battery arranger and set up your own vibe and try to establish a different identity. That's my 2 cents on it. But obviously, what they're doing right now still works. So,
because that's kind of what
being successful. But if you want to push,
that's kind of what Phantom did to jump around a little bit. Like Phantom was great. Like
I made the statement earlier in a text group. If I could march next season, I'm pretty sure I'd go to Phantom. Like that approach and vibe is just what aligns with how I drum and think about it the most at this point in my career. So like with this mentality, if I was 21 again, I'd probably go to Phantom next year and audition.
And kudos to the Phantom Regiment team for kind of taking a leap on Tyler and Matt, who are younger arrangers in the game, and year 2 just propelled even further up the chain competitively, obviously.
Fifth
but
place
also,
in year 2 is incredible.
I mean, you could just tell that the ensemble was way better overall, than last year.
The
just
jump
was
massive in
that
quality.
Consistency of team and design team, and they're figuring each other out a little bit better each year. Phantom was great. The show was great. Probably my favorite show of the year.
Yep. Absolutely loved it.
The core overall was phenomenal, and the percussion section was probably one of the easier ones to listen to from beginning to end, just because of how well it flowed and how many different styles and changes they made.
If someone knows how many vets they have or how many age outs they had, I'd be curious to know how young or old that ensemble was to see what we could possibly expect for next season.
Dude, I saw Matt post on his Instagram, and I don't know if this
we
is
did
all
see
of them.
that. You're right. It might not have been all of them, though.
He might not have been all of them, but he posted age out ceremony, and it was 4 kids from the battery, and I was like, what?
If they only age out 4, look out next season.
Yeah, I don't know if that's accurate, but I was just like, all right.
So yeah, if anyone knows, if any Phantom members are listening to this, let us know in the comments. I'm very, very curious. Because if they only had 4, look out next year. They're about to be competing with everybody.
Here we go.
In a big way.
Cavaliers, jump back down real quick.
Yep.
Honestly, I thought that the baseline and the quads, we talked about this, probably better than they were last year.
I think I will boldly just flat out say I think the quad line was better this season than it was last year. And again, I caveat all of those statements when I can do year-over-year comparisons. That is not me saying the quad line was bad last year. They won the Sanford. They were phenomenal. But I thought their quad line this year was freaking great.
Baseline slamming.
Yep.
The snare line was just not.
It was close.
They had a rocky summer just from a
lot of music changes throughout the summer.
Music changes, things. The show design. I mean, if I'm trying to be genuine and authentic, the show design was just not great from the get-go.
It just missed. The show concept didn't pan out. It just missed pacing, transitions, all that stuff. It just didn't do a whole lot. It kind of meandered around. But I know. I heard through the grapevine throughout tour. Speaking of rewrites and stuff, the rewrites happening in the battery book, and I don't know if it affected the front as well, but I would assume it probably did. You're talking, hey, we got to change this big chunk of this chart this morning and put it in the show tonight. So they were learning changes and throwing it on the field and then performing it 8 hours later, 6 hours later. Rough.
And when you're in that kind of mode and you're just all of a sudden what you've had on paper is out there and you're trying to just dissect it and make it work. It's tough. So I think ultimately the team finished strong, and the membership performed the show really well.
Yep.
All across the board, I think that they took the vehicle they had and they performed great with it. But I'm sure that I wouldn't be surprised if that's another team that's going to shake things up. Just
the core as a whole.
The core as a whole, yeah. I mean, who knows?
Everybody was. I would not be shocked if they kind of clean house a little bit in terms of a design, brass, guard, just in various areas to try to get them back to where they usually are, from competitively speaking. So yeah, I still enjoyed it. I love the approach that Bricky and them bring to the table. It's a no nonsense, nose to the grindstone, just freaking work every day and hammer those fundamentals and clean and strive for consistency. So good for them on a solid summer still. Dude, Colts were freaking good. We sat right in front of their finals lot. That was fun to watch. That was some quality drumming.
I still do want them to just give me a little more sauce, but you can't really knock it because it's just solid. It's very consistent and it's just very good.
Yep.
The quality is there. Just the way that they approach it too, similar to the Cavaliers, what you just said, as far as that no nonsense. They're just all right, we're in the zone. All right, we're repping 1 to 17A, and they're all all right, 17A, or whatever the chunk is.
Yeah, they were calling out the chunks, and then, even in the lot, how with your high school band, they'll give the instructions, and you parrot it back to them to make sure everybody knows. They were doing that in the lot. The staff member would tell them the chunk, and they would all just say it back to the staff member.
Yeah, we heard
that mental state.
Yeah. We do that in high school, so.
Yeah.
So
if it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Right, exactly. Colts were great. Let's see here. Mandarins, Colts, Cavaliers, Crown.
Crown.
Crown was way better than I was expecting.
Yes, that was something that I heard echoed by a lot of people we know who this weekend was the first time seeing it in person. I think they were better. I think they were cleaner this year than they were last year at finals.
I would agree. Obviously, like, I think in my personal preference, that book, and I know the group was young, just having spoken to in some insider knowledge. So I think that group could have handled probably a little bit more, or if things were written maybe a little bit differently, like, sometimes less space is easier,
For sure.
Things like that.
Yep.
They probably could have cleaned up a little bit earlier and gotten some things dialed in a little bit more. But overall, like, I really enjoyed watching their finals lot. I was just, I wasn't waiting for them to tick per se. I was just like enjoying it.
It was an enjoyable experience. Nothing like egregiously slapped you in the face that you're like, oh, that roll wasn't even close. You're like, there was nothing that was egregious.
Right.
It was all little stuff on reattacks and things.
I felt like last season they had reps where it was like, oh my god, like, why are you guys not winning? And then the next rep of the same chunk, you would be like, okay. That's why.
Because it's like a roll of the dice. We've beat that horse to death on here. Like, the way the writing is, it's super high risk, super high reward when it hits. It's just hard to make it consistent night to night. So we'll see what happens with them in the next season. Cores can't announce anything on like staff. We talked about Cavaliers might make some changes. Other cores, I'm sure, will.
They can't announce anything officially till after Labor Day. I think it's the Tuesday after Labor Day weekend. That's the first time they can officially announce anything. Okay.
So we'll see what happens. I do think across the board with a lot of different cores, I think you'll see some percussion sections move around. I think you'll see. I'm just curious to see where everybody lands going into next season, because I do predict there will be some shakeups. I have no inside baseball knowledge right now. This is me speculating. I think you'll see some changes at some various cores.
It's always like free agency in the NBA or NFL.
Well, think about it.
You're like,
think about it, man. You got Lee, Tom Ungst, Travis, all three sitting on the side. I mean, Travis was at Bucks, which was super cool. We could talk about that separately too. That was great. They were some of the all-age stuff we checked out was really cool, and we can get to that later. But I mean, you got three names right there that could move in if any core was looking to make a change. But we'll see. We'll see on that. We can speculate on that more after we're done finishing up these last couple cores. But
tinfoil hat.
Yeah, right. Just tinfoil hat. It's fun to throw those possibilities out there and shoot the shit about it. So we talked about Phantom. We're great. Blue Devils, just like we said in predictions, they just didn't get clean enough. Yeah, they were still playing some of the hardest, craziest battery stuff of anybody. They just weren't clean enough.
Yeah, we ended up running into Scott Johnson at one of the hotel lobbies after finals night, and just were able to just say hey and congrats on the season. And then I told him, I was like, man, you guys are playing some stuff. Like,
they're pushing the envelope in terms of hybrid rudiments and just like craziness in the middle of phrases.
It is kind of perplexing though. They've like 2 years in a row had kind of a moment that just was like so wild and like outlandish, and it's like, man, I hope you figure this out, but just never quite came to fruition. Like,
you're talking about the add-in stuff this year, right?
Yeah, last year it was like the add-in with the grandmas and the buzz rolls. This year it was like kind of they had the duos and trios of like players, like the snare to quad, like hand-to-hand split, and it's just like the clarity of intent with that, which will relate to the judges sheets like in a second, is just like, I feel like even if you nail that, it's like, was that good? There's just like a couple moments.
Hard. There were reps that I heard of that where I was like, I think that was it.
Yeah,
I think that was good.
So I mean, that stuff's just freaking hard.
It's hard, super difficult stuff. So credit to them for attempting some wild stuff.
That
they will always push the envelope, which is awesome.
That quad around for their flams exercise might be one of the hardest things I've seen.
It's pretty rough.
I was just like, this is hard.
You can just watch it and you're like, that seems
just
very
the motion
difficult.
And the amount of it's just like, I was like, all right, that's hard. Let's skip here. Let's skip the Bluecoats real quick and then we'll come back.
Okay.
Bluecoats with just, probably what I would call a very cerebral just percussion ensemble. And I wish that the pit could have gone over there so I could have experienced the whole thing like in person.
Yeah.
But that's just not possible with where the lots are for the front
Not
of the
a
battery. But, another ensemble that, especially finals night, was way better.
Dude, I thought their
than,
finals lot was freaking great.
Yeah, they were we rolled into probably like the last half of the book for finals after we left the Boston lot. And I was just like, damn,
this is great. They played really well. I also want to give a shout out because I think their quad line was phenomenal this year.
Yeah, you had mentioned that probably. You said probably the best quad line of the summer, and
it might be.
That would be hard to dispute.
They were great.
Quads. Was it the Blue Q? Great. Shout out, guys. Just
awesome.
Phenomenal. So yeah, their semis lot. I definitely noticed a huge, like, maybe they were just more relaxed. They were just like, like, this is the last night, but it was definitely like noticeably like just more in the pocket finals night. So like Bluecoats ended on a strong one. I'd love to hear that judges tape if I can get a hold of it. Boston, man, sitting in their lot, such a hype.
The energy just off the chart.
The energy is, it's crazy. They were great. All these groups, like I would say all these groups, top 12.
It was go ahead.
It was just, a game of inches or a game of millimeters, if you want to call it.
The sentiment we heard parroted amongst a lot of people we know throughout the 2 days we were there, it was a hell of a percussion year. Yeah, it was just a great year for DCI percussion sections. There were so many good groups that were having good years for where they are in the pack in terms of achievement usually, and just playing cool stuff. Just a lot of clean lines. It was just a really, really strong DCI percussion year, I thought, and a lot of others said the same thing.
I would highly encourage most people to, because I've had 5 or 6 messages about this. Like, what do you think about the drop from 0.75 to 0.35? It's like, what? I don't think you can really look from semifinals to finals. Like, I don't think you can really look at the numbers night to night. What I've always looked at are the spreads night to night.
Yeah, the spreads are more indicative.
Like, if Judge A is going to give all his groups 19-9, 19-8, and they're just, the scores are high, but the spreads are the same as Judge B, who has the lower scores but the same kind of like spreads from first to second, second to third, like those type of things. I think those are more important, especially when you're averaging, because like if Group A has a 19-8 and a 19-2 on the next night, but Group B has a 19-7 but a 19-1, like the average is still the same. So I've had a few people like, what do you think about the drop in score? I was like, all right, don't look at the numbers. Just kind of look more at the spreads. One thing that you could kind of look at and maybe nitpick a little bit was like some of the comp scores, but we'll talk about that in a second too. I think they were first in comp on finals prelims, or maybe they were second. Maybe it's 2-1-1, and then like second in comp, and then fourth in comp. Those things are. Do you want to talk about the sheets real quick?
We can, because we have to talk about Boston and Vanguard still. You want to do sheets first, or you want to get through?
Let's just finish. Let's finish this. You can go, and we'll talk about Boston Vanguard. Then I'll tie it back into Boston and Vanguard when we.
We'll talk about the progression of the top 3 and their shifting around night to night in a second. But I'll just talk. We talk about Boston. They've been doing the great stuff they've been doing the last 2 seasons. Just crazy dense notes, superb sound quality. It is still the high risk, high reward approach. If you miss the train when it leaves the station, you ain't getting back on. Or if you fall off of it in the middle of it, good luck. So it's one of those things. Vanguard,
the Razor's Edge.
I have to, channeling their Rhythm X from 2014, the Razor's Edge. I have to retract a statement or correct a statement about Vanguard that I made in my predictions podcast, because we watched Vanguard's semis lot almost all the book they played. We got over there. We had a great spot to take it all in. I had made the comment in the predictions podcast that I feel like Vanguard just got like a little. They came out really strong, but it just kind of felt the same the whole season. And a little bit of that was we're only watching on YouTube. Didn't feel it in person. Didn't hear it in person. But
the energy in person.
All I want to say is, even if that came off in the predictions as me saying, I'm not really that impressed, I was impressed. Basically, seeing it in person, they were the real deal. Anyone that tries to tell you they weren't, that drum line was phenomenal. And the aggression.
we left the
book was
semis
sick.
lot. Yeah, we left the semis lot, having watched, all those top 3 groups back to back to back, and like it was pretty clear. And this is definitely not a slight of the Bluecoats at all. No way. And this is definitely just judging from the lot. It's not on the field. It's not on the field. It's not on the field.
We've established that.
But somebody will say it anyway. Like,
yeah, it's all right.
Somebody will say, like, what happens on the lot's not on the field? Totally know that. And somebody's also going to say, you forgot about the front, which we never forget about the front. Sidebar rant. I never forget about the front ensembles when I'm doing my rankings. I just don't talk about them as much because there's 1, way less videos, and 2, I don't know it as well, which we have talked about having front ensemble people on here to remedy that. But anyway, having said that, we left a lot in semis, and I was like, Boston and Vanguard were definitely the best 2 batteries I saw. It was a top tier by itself. Boom, boom.
Yep.
1A, 1B.
There was a separation.
In whatever order you want to put.
I would say, though, after finals night, the Bluecoats put themselves in that same top tier. After seeing the Bluecoats lot finals night,
yes,
they were up there as well. But
1A, 1B, 1C in whatever order.
And if you look at how the nights evolved, prelims, semis to finals, that's pretty much what the sheet said, except for the anomaly of Bluecoats in 4th on semis. But it's rough to. Yeah. You want to talk about that? Talk about that now. Just like how the night's progressed. So Boston won drums on prelims night.
Yep.
And they were 0.05 above Vanguard, right?
No,
or Bluecoats. And then Vanguard was in 3rd.
Yeah.
What was the spread there? So Vanguard was 0.2. They were 2/10 out of 1st behind Boston. Yeah. So a little bit more of a gap there. Really a statement by Fernari. Boston's the best in my opinion, or had the best run. Bluecoats are right knocking on the door. And it was cool that he put it that close because Bluecoats had beaten Boston on Monday. And obviously they don't really take previous shows into account, but following the storyline in my brain, it was like, okay, cool. The door is still open for the Bluecoats to replicate that if they have another great run. And Boston maybe doesn't have as good of a run. Or Vanguard was close, but really after prelims to me, it was between Boston and Bluecoats in my mind. When I saw the recap, I'm like, all right, it's going to be a Boston or Bluecoats, Sanford more than likely. Okay. Fast forward to semis night. We watch all the lots and everything. We're sitting at the bar with some friends afterwards, waiting for the recaps to come out or the scores. And someone pulls it up and goes, holy shit. What? Yeah. Vanguard won and Bluecoats were in 4th. We were all just like, what? Not surprised that Vanguard could win, but that Bluecoats were in 4th.
Yeah, I would love to hear both of those tapes.
I would love to.
I would also love to hear. Well, I'd love to hear those top 4 tapes from that night.
Just out of curiosity, because it was quite a shakeup. I mean, night 2, Bluecoats dropped to 4th, Vanguard at a 19.75, and then Boston was a 10th behind them. So Boston was still in the hunt, and I think on the averages, Boston was still in 1st after semis.
Boston was still in 1st after semis.
Yeah, on the averages that far.
I mean, I had my spreadsheet going. I was cranking. I was hyping out so many scenarios on like what could happen of like tenths, what could happen.
We could have had a 3-way tie.
Here. Yeah, I figured out what it would have meant to have a 3-way tie, which I don't know what the tiebreaker is. If it's it's like the show that night that wins. But yeah, like the spread and Bluecoats being in 4th didn't like eliminate them, but it made their pathway
a lot
much harder.
They had to beat Boston by almost 3/10, I think.
Yeah,
to win the Sanford after semis.
It just had to be more than 0.25. No, it had to be more than 0.25. I still have it written down.
Yeah, 2.5 tenths. So a tall ask, a tall order at that point. Didn't take them out of it, but it was an uphill battle at that point. They had to have a run, and probably Boston have not their best run on the same night.
And then also beat Vanguard too.
Yes, and Vanguard slip a little bit as well. You're right.
There was a pathway, but it was
a rough one.
Which
the stars had to align for it to happen.
It could have happened. It could have happened. It kind of did happen as far as like Boston their placement finals, and so finals ended up being SCV on top, Bluecoats in second, Boston in third, which, not having a stellar run, just like, not to say it was bad, but just not having like the run, like the
Right.
one.
And that you look at the spread. You look at the spread of those top three. They're all less than 2/10 separates those three groups finals night from light ski.
No, it's 200s.
No, the average was 200s, but I'm talking about the finals night score gaps. Like Vanguard 19.5, Bluecoats 19.45, so half a tenth, and then you had Boston, 1.5 tenths for Boston. That's slim margins, man. That right there is just like tells you all three of those ensembles are great, and they're all just like separated by a hair. It's wild. And then you look at the 3-night average, dude. Boston
the
lost
3-night average
by 0.02, 200ths. Rough.
Which, it's mind-boggling when it gets down to that close. And then Bluecoats were 0.05 away from Boston, so really just 0.07 from first.
I want to take a second too with how tight the spreads were and how tight the race was down the stretch between those three ensembles. Really, credit to Mike Leitsky, because we watched the last 4 shows from the hotel room on the flow stream, and we had friends that were in the stadium in good seats with ears that we trust that were texting us like this group,
on the 50, like
on the 50, like Vanguard just freaking excuse my French, sorry, freaking threw down like. This was great. This sounded a little off from this group, and our friend texted us. He goes, "Dude, Mike is out there. He is running up and down that sideline, reading as much of the battery as he can. He's in the right spots for when the moments happen. He was prepared.
He knew when he had to get out there. He knew where he had to be after what moment. And I was critical of judges, which I still think some deserve that criticism of like getting locked in with like cement feet in front of the pit and not getting out there and not matching the energy. Leitsky matched the energy of the ensembles. He's like, you're giving your best effort. I'm going to give my best effort to get in front of you for your moment to read it.
Yeah. So all credit to him. For that reason, and just because Mike's a good judge, I trust how things shook out. If he put it this way, I would love to eventually hear these tapes. We'll see if we ever get to. I don't know.
Ultimately, Vanguard won 2 of the 3 nights.
Yeah, they deserve to win, and I trust where Mike put them on finals night, which was in first.
Said kind of, hope maybe I think I might be able to get my hands on some of the tapes, but we said in the predictions podcast, like I feel like it's going to be the group that has 3 great runs, 3 great ones, like just because that's how close the teams were.
And if you look at that. I think Vanguard probably the scores show this, had 3 good runs. And even if the prelims run was the weakest or subjectively from Fernari that night, whatever, they were still only 2/10 behind Boston, which is knocking on the door. You got 2 more nights to have a great one, and they obviously did. So, I
do think this is a good segue because, a lot of the comments and a lot of the messages we get for people are like, but like this book is so hard and like it's so hard and it's so hard and like the difficulty. So segue, let's pull up the sheet. Just pull up the bottom half too.
The bottom half, the music.
Well, show the top half. I don't know how you have this set up right now, but
I can. What? Hold on. Uh-oh.
Hey. Uh-oh.
Hold on, everybody.
Hard cut.
We'll get there. Almost. I'm adjusting our screen capture. And all right, should have transitioned that. Technical difficulties, everybody. We're back. Content. Evan can see my screen now, so you're the one that wanted to bring this up. I'll let you lead this discussion, and we'll go through it.
So, yeah, there's a few things. Like obviously, the content box. Your score is like 10 points on one side, 10 points on one side for a total of 10. I know it says like through 100, but like if you give a 95, that equates to a 9.5. All right, whatever. So you can get 100 score on the left box or 100 score on the right. That ultimately adds up to 10 and 10. That's how you get your 20. Musical, technical vocabulary. Everybody can kind of see that, but scroll down.
Ooh.
I do want everyone to notice that when we look through this, that's dreadfully. But hopefully everybody can read this.
No, it's pretty clear on my screen. We're good.
Great. There is no direct wordage of difficulty or like how hard something is. You know, you have creativity, variety, range of content, which, you know, range of content and variety, in my opinion, and reading these words, are like, are you offering different styles? Are you offering different skill sets? Are you offering different tempos? Are you I mean, a number of things. Like, obviously, you can't just go out there and play eighth note rolls for the whole show. It's like, oh, there's no range of content. There's no variety. And, you know, that one part there says clarity of intent, which is where, in my opinion, the boxes get tied together between content and achievement. Achievement, you know, it's a lot of the musicianship, the sound production, like your clarity, how clean you are, your expression, your dynamics. But if you're not playing well, then it's going to affect the clarity of content or intent. On that clarity of compositional intent on the other side. Like, if you have the craziest thing ever written, but like you know what I was talking about with BD, how they have like the split hand to hands between the tenors and the quads. Like, if it's not perfect, then it's like I'm not sure what that was supposed to be. Or you know,
it's hard
like,
to read and interpret and digest.
I think bass drumming is a great example of that, because sometimes like the splits are just so insane that if they're not like perfect nails, it's like, okay, was that all right? What was the intent of that?
Yeah, what did you just try to do?
So that stuff factors in. Simultaneous responsibility, that kind of leans into like the environmental demand as well. Like, what are you doing with like your listening? Or is the snare line split apart? Are you doing choreography? Are you moving really fast and really hard step sizes? Like, that sort of simultaneous responsibility factors in. Although I will say, I don't think on the aggregate most percussion judges care about like the choreography. I don't think
probably argue the same thing. It's not, I think a lot of groups are needlessly doing more than they need to in terms of like choreography with the battery.
I think more often the judges are leaning harder onto the right box, because number one, that is the side that's less subjective.
Yep.
If you start going down the content route and you just want to talk about content, but yeah, what we're doing, this is what we're doing. I think you could really easily slip into the realm of like, well, then you're just like crediting what judge likes this the more. Like, oh, I like this style.
I was going to go there as you were talking of when you get into that difficulty debate, like, well, this book was harder. It's like, well, a lot of what's harder is kind of subjective. Like, we as drummers that have played a lot of different rhythmic patterns and a lot of different books and phrases, we intuitively can listen to a snare line play something, for example, and be like, that was harder than what that group just played. But we can't really quantify it.
It's not like the Olympics.
This was harder because the flam drag led into the Swiss Army, into the left-hand grandma. Like, it's a little bit of like, we intuitively can hear it, but it's not something you can really easily quantify. And then it becomes super subjective based on the judges' opinions and expertise and what they can pick up on the fly. And all these judges are well-versed in all the subsections of the percussion ensemble. But at the end of the day, you just get too much into the realm of subjectivity when you try to be like, well, this is harder. It's like, well,
yeah. Why? I think I use the Olympics, since that's pretty relevant right now, as like an analogy. Like, you watch gymnastics and they're doing like a floor routine, and you can assign kind of a difficulty to like, oh, they're doing a two and a half back tuck, or two fulls and a full rotation. Like, everybody can do that, and it's like the same up and down. But like, you can't assign like point value to like flam drags. It's like, all right, well, what's the tempo? What rhythm is it in? What's the dynamic? Like, you can't really assign, like you said, quantify
how many players are playing it. And if you get that in the gymnastics setting like that, somebody does one jump. Okay, there might have been 3 elements to that one jump. When you're playing a 45-second drum phrase, like, you can't dissect every beat to give credit to, like, there were 8 flam drags in that 10 bars, and then you had 2 decrescendo. You just can't do that. It just
imagine going into critique and like, you're talking about content. Like, I just want you to talk about what you're doing, and then the judge sitting across tables from you is like, well, I don't like what you do as much as they do. What do you say to that?
Well, like, I think what they're doing is harder.
Yeah.
No, you display a wide range of skill sets. It's the boxes are crafted.
That's why I almost lean towards, like, you know, some people joke about like the tick system, but like, you know what? Clean is
quantifiable.
forever.
It's quantifiable.
It is like clean is forever. And I saw somebody made a funny joke. It was like clean is everything because Bluecoats show was changes everything. I was like,
yeah,
clean is everything. I was like, that's funny.
All right. Well played.
All right.
All right. Back to I'll pull our sheet back up here. So yeah, everybody, difficulty means nothing. Not that it means nothing, but
I do think that, like you said, judges are intuitively like. I'll never forget when we had Scott Johnson on our podcast, and he said, I think he was referencing Tom Float, but he said, "What's harder, 16th note decrescendo or flam drags?" And he was like, "Well, 16th note decrescendo flam drags." It's like, okay, yes. So there is a way to kind of intuitively like factor in difficulty, and I think that every judge does do that, but it's technically not on the sheets, and you cannot equate quantity to difficulty, I would say.
Correct.
So,
all right, 2 other things
rant
we wanted to talk about. Might be others. We'll see where it goes. We're 48 minutes in. We'll see.
Dude, I could go.
We could go for a bit. Let's hit this one first. You got some good bourbon in front of you. It's ready to roll, people. Let's talk about. A discussion started between us and our friends finals night after everything was said and done, and Vanguard had won, and we got talking about, and I don't want this to turn into a discussion of put the judge back on the field, but that is the discussion that sparked this concept to be brought up. When you and I were marching in 2010, 9, 11, that era, when the judge was on the field still, there were we knew the whole thing needed to be good. Because we had an idea from the season when the judge was probably going to be in front of the battery, but maybe that night they weren't going to be out there for a phrase X, and they were going to be out there for phrase Y. So we kind of treated mentally just the whole show's important. And we was just like, every phrase is equally as important as every other phrase and even if you had one phrase where there were a couple ticks, you knew there were going to be ample opportunities throughout the rest of the show. We were literally told, every phrase is a new opportunity to be perfect in front of the judge. So, if you have a tick in a phrase, move on to the next one. Screw it.
You can kind of make it up.
You knew you had that opportunity. Today's system, and I don't care what anyone says, you need to be 5 feet in front of the battery at this level of the activity to fully split the hairs in terms of drumline on a large scale across a show. But that's a whole different discussion. But put yourself in a performer's mindset of, okay, we have 2 moments in our entire show where we're up on the front sideline, and that judge can really get in front of us and hear everything. So that then can subconsciously put pressure, extra added pressure of knowing we have to nail that drum feature. If we don't, our goose is cooked. We're not winning drums if this 30 seconds isn't perfect. That's rough.
And multiple groups are really starting the show with we're going to start right out of the gate with a percussion feature. We're going to get them exposure moment, right off the rip. So you don't really get to settle into the show and the flow and just get calmed down. Cause you hear that first announcement now into the field, Phantom Regiment, the Colts, and you're juiced. Yep. So you can't even really settle into the show. But then right off the bat, you're just it's your moment. And this is one of your 30-second phrases.
Now your thumbs up came up. I don't know what caused that, but it happened.
One of your 30-second exposures of the show is right off the bat, and pressure's on, and you're not going to get many other opportunities.
Nope. So I think because friends of ours that were in the stadium, and we kind of heard some of it on the stream where the moment came. We knew the moment for the group was coming up because we'd seen the shows a lot, and then you'd heard phrases when they're on the back hash and stuff where it was cutting through, and it's all right, they're having a good one. It's cutting. And they get right in front of the judge, and you would hear gray. You would hear just a roll not have the quality of the roll they just played on the back hash cut through the mics. And then we text our buddy in the stadium, all right, how was that feature? And he was just it wasn't it. And so it's you got to think, it's a whole different dynamic to where on how the members might mentally approach the show, a performance now. They know they got 2 opportunities maybe to really throw it in the judge's face, and you're gotta nail it. And if we've heard it a bunch, if you are afraid to mess up, you will mess up. More than likely.
And I think we have to do 2 things. We have to bring back P2. First of all, like, me wanting the judge on the field is never me saying that the front ensemble should have less time.
Exactly.
Like, I don't think that solving one issue is creating an issue for another part.
Yep.
You have to have both. And do I think that the P1 judge that's on the field will ever have the same freedom of motion that they did have? No. But I think you have to have that P2 judge to where you're getting your full ensemble read. You're getting
the whole show,
holistic approach for what that percussion designer is intending to do with the horn line.
Yep.
Because you can't get that on the field. You just, I mean, you
and
can't. If you want to go into critique and talk about content, you got to have P2. But don't you dare take P1 off the field. Because like you said, you just can't read the nuance. And then it's just I like this better game.
And when you have that P2 judge, they will evaluate, and you can hear when something is not good if you're far away. But so the P2 judge will also be able to hear a pristine triplet roll that cuts through from the back hash and give the group credit for that, because you can hear that difference from a distance.
Their primary responsibility is not going to be to like call ticks.
Right. But from that far away, if like that first left double stroke isn't quite perfect, you're probably not going to notice it from the stands.
And I think you do this.
Unless it's really out. If it's like a little balance tick, you're probably not going to hear that very well from far away.
I think you do this too, because right now, like, the on-field percussion judge has like limits of like you can only go like 6 feet off the sideline or something like that. It's insane.
I think you can extend that a little bit, but that's a whole.
You extend it and you make it like a little bit more gracious of like, the show, this is a moment to get out there and sample it and get back. Like, you don't have to get mixed in with the horn and the guards.
Give them a longer leash.
You have P2 only for like the first couple weeks of the season. Like, don't put any judge on the field, because first of all, if I'm a drum corps, I don't need a judge on the field. Like, I know this stuff is dirty right now. Like,
I know.
I don't need you out there telling me it's dirty. I want you to talk to me about the orchestration. Do I need to change things? Is this not a right fit? Is like stuff not making sense with the show? Like, I want to get a holistic figure early on, so I know if I need to change or adapt the show and do that stuff early.
Mm-hmm.
I don't need you to tell me on June 29th that the triplet roll is dirty. I can hear that.
Duh.
That's fine. So you do P2 for like the first 2 or 3 weeks. The judges can get acclimated with the shows. They can take notes like, oh, I know that when I'm on the field later in the season, I can get out here for this side 1, here out this for side 2, like blah, blah, blah. There's a gap here in the middle of the field. The color guard's going to span out. Like, they can make those notes. And then around regional time and that stuff, would that shake up percussion things throughout the year? Probably.
I think so.
But I think that is better for the corps. I think it's better for the judges. So, and you just give that P1 judge a little bit more free range to where he's
because you can see some of them wanting that longer leash. You can see Jeff Brooks. You can see Lightsky. You can see him wanting to. You can see them catch themselves. Like, like they can see the batteries right there, and no one's
like
in front of them.
Looking back at the sideline, like, how far away am I? Like,
yeah, like, let them go. If the drum line's on the front hash or right behind the front hash, and there's nobody in front of them, let that drum judge run out there for that phrase. Why not? Like, you can see most of them want to do it anyway. They're holding themselves back.
Because right now it's creating a backlog in front of the front ensemble to where like the visual judge is pushing the entire battery up to like get them a read. But what's happening in most percussion moments is it's a percussion moment feature. So what's happening with the color guard? Like, oh, I don't know why I keep doing these thumbs up, but it's a percussion battery moment. So the color guard team's like, all right, this is our time to kind of like change equipment. Because it's a percussion moment. So we're going to bring our guard up front to change flags. And then you just have this traffic jam of the judge, the guard, the percussion, the battery. We're trying to get behind the concert bass drum. Like, it's just a traffic jam, man.
Yeah. I think hopefully you will see some of that start to shift and change a little bit here in the next couple of years. But we'll see. That's our rant on that.
Yep.
I want to also address the 5-ton elephant in the room that's been all over the internet since finals happened and Vanguard won, and it's the third year in a row Boston's been real close, and I think they had obviously they won all year. I mean, it just happened to be a year where a lot of other good groups and they didn't cross the finish line, but So I was kind of watching them with a refined lens a little bit, very closely, just like in terms of approach to the drum. When I would hear, everybody ticked in the final slot. I heard ticks from everybody. They're in there. You can watch the videos from the final slots. Everybody ticked. Everybody always ticks. Although that's a whole different discussion we can talk about after this too. I kind of want to actually. But something I noticed watching them when they were like hacking and stuff, the before they got together and played, I was like, they play. We've talked about how low their rolls are on here all the time, and it is impressive. Their accent to tap differential is insane.
It's
how
so
low.
impressive.
Like people around us were like, dude, they play like 1-inch rolls. And I'm thinking, and I'm hearing when ticks are happening throughout the lot and warm up and stuff, and I'm like, it's at times you wouldn't expect. Like it's in the middle of a roll. Like the roll starts good, and then like somebody changes, and that's not something that happens usually at that level of the activity. Like if the roll starts good, if it's not going to end good, it's like the last double stroke that dirts out because somebody changed it. Like the middle of it's usually solid if it starts well at that level of drum lines.
Yeah, it's like somebody prepping for the release.
Yeah, something like that. And I got thinking about it, and I was like, man, they're playing so freaking low. Like I almost wonder if they're playing too low. And it's causing inconsistencies. And they have a porn line that can blow the crowd's face off. Like, you're not going to overbalance most of the time with your triplet rolls being too beefy. And it isn't like they're playing them at, like, 232 to where they have to play them that low.
Yeah.
I almost feel like you would...
It is wildly low. It's impressively low, honestly.
But I think it might lead on the move and everything, like, because you're kind of, like, dropping the sticks in at that point. Like, it's hard to get that control and place those notes when you're not getting that nice beefy 3.5, 4 inches, for lack of a musical term, piano, mezzo piano. But like to quantify it, I almost think if they just brought the rolls, let them play a little higher.
Like let
you'd
the
balance
hands
easier
rebound a little bit more.
You'd balance easier. You can control the beef of the rolls. Like go look at the cadets last summer. Those rolls are beefy as hell, and they still sounded great, and we're still fast. And it just allows that. You got to have a little more control. Like if you're just trying to run around and you're dropping, like, not saying they're dropping it in, but it's just, I feel like I'm not saying this the right way. Like it's just so
it's
low.
It's almost like an over control.
The likelihood of you randomly scratching one of those right-hand doubles out when you're playing that low and small is higher, especially when you're moving around, in my opinion.
I think so. I think that's a valid statement. Like it's, like I said, impressively low, but I even think about like, I don't think that I played a role in my 2 summers that was like, if we had to quantify it in inches, like we're talking about, was like lower than like 4.
I mean, I played lower than that on some Bluecoat stuff. Blue Stars, definitely not.
I mean, we probably played some like piano rolls, but like if you're putting it in dynamic terms, it feels like pianissimo rolls, which is honestly, it blows my mind. Like I watch it and they're playing like those double flam drags, chat, look,
and it's like this,
and I'm just like,
I'm like, what the hell?
It's crazy.
I think it just leads to some inconsistencies.
I think it leads to more room for error instead of less room for error.
The likelihood of a double stroke dirting out in the middle of a roll because somebody you're pinching so much at that little bit. I don't want to use the word pinch. That's the wrong word. You don't really pinch, not that fast. But
the motion is so small.
Yeah, and it's just like you might crush one. You might just.
And then
it's just
also think about like the implement too, because like I've definitely bought sticks from every company in the world that feel fantastic.
Same.
And I've also bought sticks that you pick them up and you're like, this isn't the best pair. So like if you have like a bad pair and you're just like in there and you're low, it's just like, it's almost like the implement fails you. It's like, oh no.
Yeah.
So I do think that like some of that stuff, if you just like, if they were to let it rebound a hair more.
Just bring it up a little bit. Let them play a little more beef in the rolls. I think it'll make it a little
I mean,
more
you could also make the statement for other groups that if you just backed off the velocity,
definitely
5%,
it goes both ways. It goes both ways.
There were other groups that I saw. It's like if you just backed it off a little bit, this would sound better. Of course, I don't teach drum corps, so everybody's gonna be like, "Well, why don't you get out there and teach?" I'm like, "All right, well,
we haven't taught, but we played a lot of snare drum. We wore a snare drum for a long time. Played at a high level.
I also know that a lot of people that were like in BD's quad lines and stuff like that, and like some past friends, they're like, Yeah, dude, I don't think I played a roll that was below like 5 inches all summer at
Yeah.
BD quad line. So,
And like I'm saying, like I get it. You need to play quiet when you're in high school marching band and stuff. And I am not equating the Boston Crusaders to a high school marching band in any way, shape, or the form. I want to put that out there. But you can play beefier rolls in drum corps 95% of the time. And I don't think their tempos were fast enough to require that fine of a touch on the triplet roll figures. Because again, some of the ticks I heard from them were in the middle of rolls, like somebody just scratched out a random double stroke, or just was just so low and fast. I don't know. It's just a vibe that I got, just something I noticed in the middle of it.
I don't know. I mean, I have a few other rants, but one is holistically that the trombone solo needs to come to an end.
Just because you can have a trombone in your show does not mean you have to, or
this
even
trend
should.
has been beat to death.
And every corps
mostly because it's all the same. It's like,
the same.
we're gonna play a lot of glissandos, and then like rasp, like I mean, it's just all the same. Like
I'm gonna clip that. That was hilarious.
So shows definitely feel segmented in the fact that like you have indoor drums, then you have indoor guard, then you have brass moment, and then you have full ensemble.
And that was something the Bluecoats show did very well. That show was integrated, seamless as a production from start to finish.
I think, looking back on a previous statement I made about General Effect, that's probably why they were so successful in that caption, because it was so seamless from beginning to end. It just felt like one thing that led to another, that led to another, that led to another. This happened, therefore this happened, therefore this happened. But this happened, so then this happened. It was like a cause and effect, not just like we did this, and then we did this, and then we did this. And it was like, a marching band show. So I think ultimately that is why that show, General Effect, like it did make a ton of sense.
Yeah.
Still may be a hair long for me, but that's personal preference. Also, I will say that I miss the cadets.
I think everybody does.
Rip to the cadets. Cheers to that one. But yeah.
But no, it was just a really, really good season. I mean, tons of strong groups, cool books, great playing.
I think to double back on like I think you said this earlier, but overall the aggregate of the percussion ensembles were just really, really good.
Really high.
So
very high.
I'm looking forward to it. Already the indoor thing. I'm looking forward to seeing like the carousel of like theories on who's going where and what's going where and what's going to happen. We have some time until all those announcements are made, but I do anticipate that there will be some changes. Changes everything.
Yeah, there it is. There it is, everybody. Speaking of indoor, too, I'm going to plug it. Aged Out Fundamentals, folks. Auditions are probably in like a month and a half for some indoor groups and stuff, and those will really help. If you're a high school kid, take advantage of them. If you're a college kid auditioning, even if you're a vet of a drum corps and you want to move up to a higher drum corps or go back to the same corps, it's just but all right. You got anything else? Any other rants?
Nope.
All right, everybody. Comment, like, subscribe. Let us know. Are we dumb? Are we smart? Do you agree? Do you disagree? Who did you like this summer? Who do you think should have won? Do you agree with the TV winning? Share the podcast with anybody. Facebook, Instagram, follow agedoutpodcast.com. Buy a shirt or a sticker. Patreon.com. Join button on YouTube. You can give as little as 99 cents a month if you like what we do and want to support us. Aged Out Fundamentals, like I said, work on your mental stamina, physical stamina, rhythmic interp, all that good stuff. BrashDrums.com. Grab a practice pad, and I think we'll see everybody in the next video, which should be a few reactions we didn't get to. So,
yeah.
We also are planning on doing the sit-downs with the arrangers again. So those will be coming over the next few weeks as well. And we just keep the train moving, everybody. Thanks.
Peace.